Innocent faces, tragic lives. These kids went through hell. Behind each gaze lies a haunting story waiting to be uncovered. 14-year-old Czeslawa Kwoka's lip is bleeding, her hair is cut short, and her eyes are full of fear. She was taken to Auschwitz with her mother in December 1942. In 1912 London, a photograph of a child with a cleft lip was circulated as part of a disturbing eugenics movement. The image wasn't about compassion or understanding, it was propaganda, used to argue that children with such conditions should be prevented from having families of their own. Head binding is a form of body alteration which the skull of a human being is deformed intentionally. In a typical case, head binding begins approximately a month after birth and continues for about 6 months. Doctors said Annalisa had epilepsy, but she was sure demons had taken over her body. After 67 exorcisms, Annalisa stopped eating, believing it was a sacrifice to save others. On July 1st, 1976, she died of starvation at 23, her body broken, her story haunting. Ulla was only 10 years old when her life was stolen on August 24, 1943, at the Schwerin-Sachsenberg Sanitarium, a place that hid its true purpose as a killing center. Born with Down syndrome, she became a victim of the Nazis' cruel euthanasia program, which targeted children they deemed unworthy of life. A really poor boy on the streets of London that stole some vegetables to survive. A lot of children were starving back in 1900. This child's life, like millions of others, was tragically lost because of the brutality of the Holocaust and Nazi persecution. 4-year-old István Reiner from Miskolc, Hungary, smiling for the camera in the ghetto days before he was deported to Auschwitz. But within days, he was murdered in the gas chambers of Auschwitz. In 1944, in the early 20th century, a shocking and deeply controversial sideshow at Coney Island drew crowds from all over. Premature babies displayed in incubators as part of a spectacle overseen by Dr. Martin Cooney, known as the Incubator Doctor. Byron was only 7 years old when he sadly perished from a skull fracture due to a tractor accident on August 19th. Bobby Driscoll, the voice of Disney's Peter Pan, led a life as tragic as it was remarkable. Born in 1937, he was discovered at just 5 years old and quickly became one of Hollywood's brightest young stars, appearing in films like Song of the South and of Peter Pan. But his rise to fame was followed by a rapid fall from grace after Howard Hughes bought RKO Studios in 1948 and fired Driscoll, along with hundreds of others. The young actor's life spiraled. By 17, he was addicted to heroin, and by 1961, his career was effectively over after a stint in prison. Moving to New York, he found himself in the underground art scene, mingling with Andy Warhol's circle, but his personal struggles deepened. The tragedy of Bobby Driscoll's life serves as a stark reminder of the dark side of fame. A young boy, his life shattered by a severe brain tumor, became a patient of Dr. Harvey Cushing in the early 1900s. Tragically, despite Cushing's efforts, the boy's life was claimed by the disease, forever remembered in those images. Little Gitel was just 4 years old when her life was cruelly taken at Treblinka in 1942, a child too young to understand the hate that brought her there. She was among thousands of Jewish children caught in the horrors of the Holocaust. Hannah Lehrer was just 12 years old when she became one of the many victims of the Rumbula massacre on November 30th, 1941. Along with her family and thousands of others, she was forced to march to the Rumbula forest near Riga, Latvia, where Nazi soldiers systematically murdered them. In a remote village, a twisted family made a grim living by plucking the teeth of young boys. The patriarch believed each tooth held dark power, used in rituals to ensure the family's immortality. One day, 15-year-old Daniel discovered their horrifying secret. His teeth, now part of their dark practice, were pulled one by one, each extraction sealing his fate. The pain was unbearable, not just physical, but knowing his life had been stolen for their cruel ritual. Trapped forever in the family's dark legacy, Daniel became just another victim. This picture shows a kid being paddled by a teacher in the early 1900s. Kids walked the hallways with a quiet fear, knowing that one misstep could lead to the principal's office, where the paddle waited like an executioner's tool. James Bailey started smoking at just 3 years old, imitating his heavy smoking parent. What began as innocent mimicry turned into a severe addiction by the time he was 6, smoking a pack a day. His parents tried to intervene, but quickly gave up, even buying him cigarettes to avoid his tantrums. James's small body bore the weight of his addiction, persistent coughs, yellow-stained fingers, and a frail frame. Teachers and neighbors noticed, but stayed silent. By 10, his childhood was stolen, his lungs already damaged. James's tragic story highlights neglect, addiction, and a society that turned away instead of helping. In 1880, in the dark streets of Victorian Liverpool, a young girl was found in a garret, a cold, empty loft above an old, crumbling building. She was thin and pale, dressed in torn rags, and curled up in a corner. The room was bare, with scraps of rotten food and a broken window letting in the bitter wind. She didn't speak, her eyes filled with fear and sadness. Left alone and forgotten, she was one of many children suffering in a city full of riches, where the poor were often ignored and left to survive on their own. This little innocent girl was sadly killed on the 24th of February 1945 at the door of her home, 7 years old. In November 1990, amidst the tension and grit of the Zonguldak coalfields, a young Turkish boy became a symbol of hope and defiance. Standing among the crowd of 42,000 striking miners, his small frame carried the weight of a powerful gesture. With determination burning in his eyes, he raised a hammer high above his head. A simple tool turned into a symbol of solidarity. The miners, fighting for fair wages and humane conditions, saw in him the future they were struggling to protect. In that moment, the boy was more than a child. He was the voice of a generation demanding justice. But unfortunately, because of this incident, he was cruelly murdered by the defenders in a bomb blast. A photo of Rusya Hale in 1942. Rusya was sadly murdered at Sobibor death camp with her parents on May 21, 1943, at age 14 months. During the Dutch famine of 1944, known as the Honger Winter, an emaciated boy wandered the cold, desolate streets of the Netherlands. Starvation had gripped the nation, and the boy's thin frame was a haunting testament to the brutal reality of the war. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow from days of hunger, his skin stretched tight over bone. With little food and few resources, families were left to scavenge while the once thriving cities lay in ruin. The boy, like many others, became a symbol of the unimaginable suffering endured during one of the darkest chapters of World War II. Itan Patz was a 6-year-old boy from New York City who was abducted on May 25, 1979, while walking to his bus stop in Soho. His disappearance shocked the nation and marked the beginning of a new era in missing children awareness. His face became one of the first to appear on milk cartons across the United States, a campaign that would later become iconic in helping to raise awareness for missing children. Itan was declared dead in 2001, though his case remained unresolved for many years. His tragic fate helped spark greater efforts in child safety and abduction prevention, a glimpse of the poorest kids in London back in 1900. In 1943, Lunek was just 3 years old when his life was tragically stolen in the horrors of a mass execution in his hometown. The brutality of war shattered his innocence, as he, along with countless others, was forced to witness unspeakable cruelty. Men, women, and children were lined up near a deep hole, stripped of their dignity and humanity. As gunshots rang out, the helpless victims fell. Infants and small children like Lunek were not spared. They were buried alive, left to suffocate in the earth. His life, cut short by violence, became a haunting reminder of the atrocities of war. Throughout ancient history, many children faced tragic lives due to the ravages of war. From the age of 5, they were often caught in the horrors of conflict, forced to flee their homes, or worse, become soldiers or slaves. In war-torn cities, famine and disease spread, leaving children vulnerable to death. Their villages were burned, families torn apart, and many were orphaned at a young age. These children grew up in constant fear, their childhood stolen by violence and bloodshed. War stripped them of innocence, leaving emotional and physical scars that lasted a lifetime. Their pain was often forgotten by history. Little Wolf was only 6 when he was sadly murdered at Auschwitz-Birkenau on May 1944. Karen Ann King, born in Saginaw, Michigan, she spent all 18 years of her life there, where she was described by those who knew her as a kind, quiet, and excellent student. However, Karen's life was tragically cut short on January 3, 1997, when she was abducted by 15-year-old Shaitur T. Williams and his cousin, 25-year-old August M. Williams. Karen, who had returned home from Michigan State University for Christmas break, had gone to the Genesee Meat Market to grab food for dinner. There, she was kidnapped by the 2 men, who blindfolded and brutally attacked her. After raping her, they took her body to the new Amador Apartments in Saginaw to show off to their friend. The next day, Karen's lifeless body was discovered on Euclid Avenue near a car salvage yard. Karen's murder shocked the community and left her family and friends devastated. Alida Baruch was only 5 months old when she She, along with her parents, was deported to Auschwitz on July 16, 1942. A victim of the Holocaust, she was part of the tragic wave of Jewish families targeted by the Nazis. As a baby, she had no understanding of the horrors awaiting her in the concentration camp. Like so many others, Alita's life was stolen by the brutality of the Holocaust. Her story, though brief, is a heartbreaking reminder of the millions of innocent lives lost during one of history's darkest periods. Nachum Goldberg was just 5 years old when he was tragically murdered in the gas chamber at the Treblinka death camp in 1942. Like so many innocent children during the Holocaust, Nachum's life was brutally cut short as part of the systematic extermination of Jews by the Nazis. His name, though his life was brief, serves as a poignant reminder of the countless young lives lost in the atrocities of World War II. The photo of Nachum, though small in scale, symbolizes the immeasurable pain and loss endured by families torn apart by the horrors of genocide. Joseph Prager, born on October 22, 1929, in Vienna, was just 13 years old when he was tragically murdered at Sobibor on June 11, 1943, during the Holocaust. His young life was cut short in a brutal act of genocide. Like so many others, Joseph was a victim of an inhumane system that targeted children, families, and communities. Disease, deprivation, and violence were rampant in the concentration camps, but in Joseph's case, it was the systematic killing that claimed his life. Ivan Berend was almost 14 years old when uniformed fascists arrived at his apartment, forcing him to work in the countryside for the German Nazis. If he had refused, he had been killed immediately. In 1948, a shocking photo of a Chicago woman was published, showing her apparently selling her children. The image, captured in a moment of poverty, later revealed the heartbreaking truth. The woman followed through with the act. She handed over her 2 young children to strangers, likely in a desperate attempt to survive. The children were placed in foster care, with one adopted by a family out of state and the other in an orphanage. The trauma of being sold and abandoned left deep emotional scars, marking a tragic chapter in their young lives, shaped by poverty and desperation. Paul was only 7 when he sadly perished from congenital heart disease. The child, whose name remained unknown, was discovered in the family home, lifeless and cold. Authorities soon uncovered a heartbreaking truth. The parents, overwhelmed by their own struggles, had resorted to neglect and abuse. The child's death, shrouded in secrecy, went unnoticed by the outside world for too long. The community, in shock and disbelief, wondered how such a tragedy could unfold behind closed doors. The child's short, painful life ended in silence, a reminder of the hidden horrors some children endure. Beverly Potts vanished 67 years ago, and the mystery remains unsolved. 2 girls who were conjoined twins sharing a single body. From birth, their life was marked by both medical challenges and extraordinary strength. Though their hearts beat as one, they each had their own unique thoughts and personality. However, their shared existence was fraught with hardship. Their parents fought for medical support and to provide them with a normal childhood, but constant surgeries and the risks of their condition loomed over them. Tragically, despite their bond, they passed away, leaving behind a legacy of courage and a heartbreaking story of love and loss. Betty Lou Williams, born Lily B. Williams on January 10, 1932, in Albany, Georgia, had a rare and shocking condition, a parasitic twin growing from the left side of her body. From a young age, she was thrust into the spotlight, making money for her family through Ripley's Believe It or Not. Despite being born into poverty, she became wealthy enough to buy a farm for her parents, but her life was filled with pain. Betrayed by a man who took her fortune, Betty Lou suffered a broken heart, leading to her tragic death at just 23 from an asthma attack. A harrowing photograph has captured the purgatory endured by this disabled boy, forced to live a life of solitude and hardship in Victorian-era Britain. In 1963, Richard Avedon captured a haunting image of a young girl at the Louisiana State Mental Hospital. She was confined in the institution, suffering from severe mental illness, her face etched with pain and despair. Her condition worsened, with no hope of recovery in the overcrowded, understaffed hospital. The girl's tragic life was marked by neglect, her every attempt at escape from the tormenting world around her crushed by the institution's harsh reality. Despite her silent struggles, the girl passed away at a young age, her life lost to a system that failed to offer her the care she desperately needed. Born in Pittsburgh on May 5, 1962, Grady Stiles, known as Lobster Boy, was born with a rare genetic condition called ectrodactyly, which caused his hands and feet to resemble lobster claws. Despite his unusual appearance, Grady became a sideshow attraction, performing with the Ringling Bros and Barnum and Bailey Circus. His life, however, was filled with tragedy. Struggling with alcoholism and a volatile temper, Grady's personal life was marked by abuse. A young girl who was just 2 years old lived in a small town with her beloved pet cat, Whisker. She had grown up with the cat, and they shared a special bond. One fateful day, while playing with Whiskers, something triggered the cat to bite this small girl. The wound seemed minor at first, but soon became infected. Despite her parents' best efforts to treat it, the infection rapidly spread. Within days, her condition worsened, and she tragically passed away from septicemia. Her death shocked the community, as it was a heartbreaking reminder of how a simple bite could turn fatal. David McGreevy, 67, murdered Paul Ralph, 4, and his sisters, Dawn, 2, and 9-month-old Samantha, in Worcester in 1973. But the victim's mother, Elsie Uri, said he has now been released. Neubrandenburg, Germany, 1945, sadly drowned in a lake along with her mother as a result of suicide, 7 years old. Anne Frank and Sana Lederman in this picture, happy and not aware of what is coming. Anne Frank, a young Jewish girl, became a symbol of resilience and hope in the face of unimaginable darkness. Forced into hiding during the Holocaust, she poured her fears, dreams, and unyielding optimism into the pages of her now famous diary. Despite the oppressive conditions of the secret annex, Anne's words radiate a profound belief in humanity's goodness. Her life, tragically cut short in a concentration camp, reminds us of the immense loss caused by hatred. Yet her legacy continues to inspire courage, empathy, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Eric was said to suffer from Cramp's disease, juvenile epilepsy, and was transported to Alsterdorf Asylum, then transported to Kalmenhof Psychiatric Hospital on August 21, 1943, then was sadly murdered at Eidstein Taunus at age 8 years during his arrival.